humanity's emotional intelligence, defeats an ancient alien collective. The silver disk hovered silently above Central Park, casting no shadow despite its massive size. Jim Park stood transfixed, fingers twitching in precise geometric patterns, a nervous habit he developed as a child. All around him, New Yorkers pointed smartphones skyward, their excited chatter creating a discordant symphony that made Jim wince behind his noise-canceling earbuds. "The probability distribution is wrong," he whispered, eyes tracing imperceptible patterns across the vessel's seamless hull. "It shouldn't be here." Similar scenes unfolded across every major city worldwide. Dubai, Tokyo, London, Sao Paulo each hosted an identical craft, motionless and silent. After 3 days of hovering, the ships had done nothing but trigger global panic, economic collapse, and desperate political maneuvering. Until now. The bottom of the disk above Manhattan suddenly rippled like disturbed mercury. A column of light knot projected downward, but somehow pulled from the air itself coalesced into a humanoid figure that floated gently to the ground before Jim. The being stood 7 feet tall, with silver-blue skin that reflected its surroundings like polished metal. Its facial features were symmetrical to the point of unnerving perfection. When it spoke, its lips didn't synchronize with the words that appeared directly in Jim's mind. "We are the collective. We have watched, we have guided, we have returned." Amanda Hartz pressed her palms against the cool observation glass, ignoring the military personnel frantically coordinating around her. As the government's top crisis psychologist, she'd been helicoptered to the hastily established containment zone within an hour of the being's appearance. "What do you feel?" General Winters demanded, breaking her concentration. Amanda's eyes never left the alien now seated across from 3 linguistic specialists in the sealed chamber below. "Nothing and everything," she murmured, a familiar pressure building behind her temples. "It's like trying to hear a single conversation in a stadium of whispers." Unlike the other experts assembled, Amanda wasn't watching the alien's expressions or analyzing its language patterns. She was feeling for emotional resonance, the subtle energetic field she'd sensed from humans since childhood. Her unusual empathic sensitivity had made her a formidable psychologist, but it had never prepared her for this. "They're lying," she said suddenly, certainty flooding her system though she couldn't articulate why. "Everything they're saying about peaceful exchange. There's something underneath." The general scoffed. "Based on what evidence, Dr. Hartz?" "The same evidence that tells me you're terrified beneath that practiced stoicism, General." She turned to face him directly. "Some things don't require physical proof to be true." 3 days later, the aliens now identified as the collective addressed humanity simultaneously through every electronic device on Earth. Their message was simple. They had guided human evolution from afar, subtly influencing key moments in history to prepare us for ascension. Now they offered gifts beyond imagination: clean energy technology, medical advancements, faster-than-light travel principles. All they requested in return was access to certain, inconsequential, resources and permission to establish outposts in unpopulated regions. World leaders scrambled to accept, desperate for solutions to Earth's mounting crises. Jim Park watched the broadcast alone in his apartment, surrounded by whiteboards covered in complex equations. He paused the alien representative's image mid-sentence and stepped closer to the screen. "Those expressions aren't random," he mumbled, tracing patterns in the air. "They're cyclical, predetermined, like subroutines." His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You see it too, don't you? Meet me tomorrow. Central Park, 9 m. Ah." Jim arrived 15 minutes early, positioning himself on a bench with optimal sightlines. He'd researched Amanda Hartz extensively overnight, her controversial theories on emotional intelligence as quantifiable energy, her uncanny success rate with trauma patients, her abrupt departure from traditional academia. I counted 7 distinct facial expression patterns, Jim said without preamble as Amanda sat beside him. They rotate predictably regardless of speech content. Amanda nodded, unsurprised by his directness. I sense 7 distinct emotional signatures too, though emotional isn't quite the right word, more like operational modes. Jim's fingers began their familiar dance. Prime number, significant. The gifts they're distributing don't make sense either, Amanda continued. The fusion technology they provided to Germany last week, I've spoken with scientists who say its efficiency is deliberately limited, like giving a child a calculator that can only add and subtract when multiplication exists. Controlled advancement, Jim agreed. They're not sharing technology, they're implementing a development pathway. Over the following weeks, they meticulously documented discrepancies that others overlooked. The collective ships maintained precisely calculated distances from one another globally, a geometric pattern that shifted by exactly 0.0314 radians daily. Their technological gifts solved immediate problems but created subtle dependencies. Most concerning were the resource extraction sites, established in remote locations, surrounded by security perimeters that no monitoring equipment could penetrate. While nations celebrated unprecedented prosperity, Jim and Amanda built a network of other observers, mostly neurodivergent individuals, whose unique perceptual abilities detected what neurotypical minds filtered out. A pattern-recognizing synesthete in Mumbai, a hyper-empathic teenager in Lagos, a schizophrenic mathematician in Buenos Aires whose hallucinations perfectly predicted collective ship movements. They engineered their emotional responses out, Amanda explained during a clandestine meeting 3 months after first contact. Their group now numbered 23, gathered in a warehouse lined with signal-blocking material. Based on everything we've observed, the collective operates on pure logic, no emotional intelligence whatsoever. It makes them predictable. But why manipulate us for centuries only to reveal themselves now? Asked Surrey, the synesthete who visualized data patterns as color structures. Jim projected a global map marked with collective extraction sites, resources, but not the ones they claimed. The extraction points correlate precisely with unusual geomagnetic anomalies I've been tracking for years. His voice quickened with intensity. They're not mining minerals. They're harvesting something fundamental about Earth itself. The warehouse door crashed open. Armed figures in black tactical gear swarmed in, led by General Winters. "Dr. Hartz," he said grimly, "you and your associates need to come with us immediately." Amanda stepped forward, sensing not hostility but desperate urgency from the general. "What's happened?" 12 hours ago, we lost contact with everyone within a 100-mile radius of the Antarctic extraction site. 3 million people in southern Chile and Argentina, simply gone. The military facility buzzed with controlled panic. Satellite imagery showed a perfect circle of emptiness where vibrant cities had stood days before, not destruction absence, as if that portion of Earth had been carefully excised. "They're harvesting consciousness," Amanda stated flatly to the assembled Joint Chiefs and scientific advisors. "Your instruments show no radiation, no particles, no energy weapons, because they're not taking physical matter. They're extracting the emergent property that arises from it." Jim's fingers flew across multiple screens, correlating data. The collective evolved beyond individual consciousness to a unified logical system, but logic alone reaches evolutionary dead ends. They need the unpredictable innovations that only emotionally driven minds create. "That's why they guided our development," Amanda continued. "Not as benefactors, but as farmers cultivating a crop." General Winters leaned forward. "If what you're saying is true, how do we fight an enemy that's potentially millions of years beyond our technology?" Jim and Amanda exchanged glances. "We use what they don't have," Jim said. "Emotional intelligence, intuitive leaps, the very chaos they're trying to harvest. They called it Operation Dissonance. While conventional military forces created diversionary attacks against collective outposts worldwide, Jim's network implemented their real strategy. 23 neurodivergent individuals positioned at key locations, each utilizing their unique cognitive differences to introduce unpredictability into what the collective believed was a perfectly modeled system. Jim stationed himself in New York, beneath the still-hovering mothership. Armed with nothing but a quantum encryption device of his own design, he began broadcasting mathematical paradoxes equations that appeared logical, but contained subtle emotional components that created unsolvable recursions. In Sydney, Surrey translated emotional states into color patterns that disrupted the collective's communication frequencies. In Cairo, an autistic musician composed harmonic structures that resonated with the ship's hull frequencies, creating interference patterns that human instruments couldn't detect, but that Jim had theorized would disrupt collective processing. Amanda took the most dangerous position, allowing herself to be captured at the Washington, D.C. outpost. Her empathic abilities had grown exponentially since first contact, and she now understood that the collective operated as a unified conscious field rather than individual entities. As they attempted to process her consciousness for harvesting, she focused not on resistance but on emotional projection, transmitting complex emotional states that had no logical translation. The effect cascaded through their network: confusion, paradox, emotional concepts with no rational equivalents, love intertwined with sacrifice, hope coexisting with grief. The sublime irrationality of human consciousness infiltrated their perfectly ordered system like a conceptual virus. Above Manhattan, the massive ship shuddered for the first time since its arrival. Its perfect surface rippled with dissonant patterns. Similar reactions echoed across the globe as the collective's unified consciousness struggled to process the unprocessable. In the Washington facility, Amanda faced the primary interface entity, its previously perfect features now distorted with unfamiliar expressions. "You introduce chaos," it stated, voice fluctuating unnaturally. "System contamination spreading." "Not chaos," Amanda replied calmly. "Emergence, the property you lost when you engineered emotion away. You can't predict or control it, and you can't harvest it without experiencing it." Jim's voice came through her hidden communicator. "It's working. Their network is fracturing. Ships are losing cohesion worldwide." The entity before Amanda flickered, its unified consciousness separating into individual components as the emotional complexity overwhelmed its logical frameworks. What is happening?" "Individual consciousness is emerging within your collective," Amanda explained. "You're experiencing the unpredictability you sought to harvest. The question is, can you survive it?" The global transformation happened not with apocalyptic destruction, but with unexpected silence. Collective ships did not crash or explode, they simply changed. Their perfect geometries became organic, asymmetrical. The unified consciousness that had operated as the collective for millennia fragmented into billions of individual awareness points, each suddenly experiencing emotion for the first time since their species' ancient past. 3 weeks later, Jim and Amanda stood before the United Nations Security Council, alongside an altered representative of what had been the collective. "We were incomplete," the being explained, its voice now carrying genuine emotional resonance. "In our pursuit of perfect logic, we eliminated the very spark that drives evolution, emotional innovation. We became perfect but static. When we recognized our error, we couldn't reintegrate what we had eliminated from our own genome." "So you cultivated it in us," Amanda finished. "Guided human development to maximize emotional intelligence alongside logical capacity." The being nodded. "We intended a controlled harvest, but you showed us something unexpected, that consciousness cannot be extracted without destroying its essential nature. In forcing us to experience emotional states directly, you triggered our species' dormant potential for individual consciousness. Jim stepped forward. The mathematical probability of this outcome was infinitesimal. That's exactly what you couldn't account for, the illogical intuitive leaps that emotion makes possible. As the world rebuilt from the collective's partial harvest, a new era of cooperation emerged. The transformed beings, now calling themselves the Divergent, shared their full knowledge freely, no longer seeking to control humanity's development path. In return, humans helped them navigate the chaotic terrain of emotional existence. The extraction sites were transformed into joint research centers, where both species explored the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. The perfect geometric patterns of collective ships gave way to beautiful, asymmetrical organic structures that reflected their newly individuated consciousness. 1 year after Operation Dissonance, Jim and Amanda stood on the observation deck of the International Consciousness Research Station in what had once been the Antarctic extraction zone. "They still struggle with illogical decisions," Amanda noted, watching a group of Divergent attempting to understand human art. Jim's fingers traced their now familiar patterns in the air, "and we still need their logical frameworks to solve our biggest challenges." Separate, both approaches reached their limits. But together, Amanda smiled, taking his hand and stilling its movement. "Together," Jim finished, allowing himself to fully meet another's eyes for perhaps the first time in his life, "we create something greater than the sum of our parts." Below them, human and divergent scientists worked side by side, exploring the emergent properties that arise when logic and emotion intertwine, the true harvest neither species could have achieved alone. Thank you for listening.